This conference will now be recorded.
actually owned their own property.
Just a thought on this, and then we're gonna take a 5-minute recess. Should it say a legal, you can't say recent, because I mean, 10 years ago, it's like yesterday. So a legal survey of the subject property? I mean, how can we, if someone produces that survey from 20 years ago, it should be okay to use.
What is that survey called? Is it called, I don't think it's called legal, I think it's called certified or.
Certificate of survey, and then it's signed by a surveyor with their license number on there.
Okay.
So you know that it was a licensed surveyor that said, and they would have like the job number. And then we have like a few licensed surveyors that work in the county. So I typically would get surveys from a particular group of people. And if we are looking for an old map, if you find an old map and looking for maybe an electronic version of it, sometimes you can just reach out to them and find out if they have the map. So it's always signed by a licensed surveyor, and they have their license number on there as well.
Okay, take 5.
I'm just thinking of something.
Go ahead.
We've had a couple farms that we're gonna do some grain bin stuff on, and they had to get a survey because they didn't know where the lines or the pins were. And now they're happy that they got it. But it seems like maybe, I don't know if you wanna put a time in there, but, or so many years, but it seems like every generation maybe needs, oh, where's the survey at? Well, we don't have one, or we can't find it, well, we'd have to do another one. Or when the property changes or a piece gets sold, then you have to do the survey. Then you know where those pins are.
I think that a generation ago, when we didn't have GIS and digital pins as well as physical pins, we relied just on the physical pins. Needing to reestablish those corners, we just talked about establishing those corners was necessary. I do, in my mind, we want to think kind of hard here about what can we as a county do to help us be forward thinking, so that 2 generations from now, we're not still looking for pins, that we have physical pins established, and we also have the digital pins established. So I would love 20 years from now to be able to say, that was one of the great things our board did. We made sure that our county had established corners so that people who were doing surveys, they were less expensive because the corners were established. Even if they had to do a survey, it was less expensive. Our GIS was actually reflective of what our boundaries are in our county, so that when people look at it, they know what they're getting.
Will that have a negative effect if we had the surveys done where the neighbor's gonna find out that?
Well, there's gonna be some of that, absolutely.
It's like, we wanna go down that road.
Oh, yeah.
And you know something? It's not like we don't have that happen now, but we have it on a piece-by-piece basis. So I lose five feet on one side of the field, but I get it on the other side.
Right before auto steer, we established some property lines, and now we discovered that they're wrong. I got one that way in the back of the 80 is the post, so that's the property line. And then in the front, there's an open intake. And that's what they used as the property line. And then when we got auto steer and started snapping the line, we discovered that the open intake was like 30 feet on the neighbors.
There's quite a few of them out there.
Yeah,
There's a ton of
lot.
it.
yeah.
There's a ton of it.
And they maybe put the open intake in, thinking it was the property line.
Yeah.
This conference will now be recorded.
You keep going.
We move on.
We're back. Yes, we're back. We're back.
So, we talk about the
I'm
surveys
good.
and stuff. You good?
I think, I don't know, I think it's probably got to stay in there.
Okay.
You guys agree?
I think we're just asking for trouble, particularly on small parcels.
The next one, we'll talk about the conditions on variances. Talks about the water adjustments may impose conditions, including restrictions that benefit the property. So in state statute, it talks about conditions that we put on variances has to pass that ROF proportionality test. It means that the condition has to be related to the request and not something else. And it has to be reasonable and not something that is way out of the ordinary. And as I mentioned in the condition is kind of part of it, I mean, typically would have general conditions and then conditions that pertain to that particular request. So something like variances complying with all state statutes, federal regulations and local ordinances, that's like one general regulation that we put on all variances. And then not just one particular one. So we would have general conditions and have specific conditions as well. And then we're talking about relief less than requested. Sometimes another person might talk about needing a variance, maybe 50 feet, and then sometimes it makes sense that a person would need a variance more than what they're requesting for, or less than what they're requesting for. So at the planning commission level, at the board of adjustment level, we talk about if there's a need to amend the person's variance request as needed. So there's opportunity to amend your request or go ahead with your request, but you always have room to make adjustments based on information that's provided at the hearing stage. Then we have criteria for granting variances in here. As mentioned, just like in our conditional use part of it, it has to comply with the requirements of the comprehensive plan in there. And then I could not find anything on the Minnesota Association of AMC website on variances, but I could find one for legal Minnesota cities. But we do have different statutory requirements for counties and cities, but then they're almost similar. So variances follow the same process as in the cities. But most of the ones I looked at for adjoining counties have like these 5 criteria in there. So with our variances, the response to all the 5 criteria has to be yes for us to approve the variance request. If any of them is no, will be grounds to either deny the request or request for additional information. The next one of it talks about application requirements. So basically requiring a survey, the legal description of the parcel, and all of that, which we have in our application packet whenever somebody wants to apply for the variance. The other part of it talks about our notification process, and then the last bit of it talks about, I think, we have a section also talking about notifying the Department of Natural Resources when it's in the shoreline village, because it's county jurisdiction and general jurisdiction. And then we would always require the applicant or their representative to be at the meeting to answer questions whenever we are doing conditional uses and variances. The last part of it, so this is the notification part of it, where we have the 60-day rule. So 60-day rule, we have 60 days to approve variances, and they typically would extend them to 20 days. And how the board of adjustments is created, both by our county ordinance and by the state regulation. That's the board that the decision doesn't come to the county board. We don't have county commissioner being on the board of adjustment, because that's not like how it's supposed to be created. But we do have one person on the board of adjustment that serves on the planning commission as well, to serve as a liaison between the 2 boards. If a decision by the board of adjustments, the person doesn't like it, they have the opinion or they have the chance to appeal it. But the appeal of the board of adjustment decision goes to the district court. So their board of adjustment decision doesn't come to the county board for final approval, but we could do like more like an informational request like we do for WhatsApp committee meeting about the number of variances or the variances we're working on, but their decision, their recommendation doesn't come to the county board because of how Minnesota State Statute 394 talks about creation of the board of adjustment.
So we can give the Board of Adjustment what we feel is the right, that their decision is final.
Yeah, decision is final, and then if you don't like the decision, it goes to the district court. So
Say that again?
it goes to the court system.
If we appeal it? I
So you
mean,
can
can the
appeal
county
it.
board appeal it?
So we have like an appeal process that we have in there. The Board of Adjustment listens to appeals, especially with regards to a decision made by the county planning and zoning administrator. So like, if we make a decision at the planning and zoning level and the person doesn't like it, we can appeal the decision at the Board of Adjustment level. If you want to make it appeal a decision by the Board of Adjustment level, you have to do it in the district court. So their decision is final based on how their creation is in state statute. I think I did put a section in there that talks about their creation. I think it's like 394.27 subdivision 9. Talks about appeals to the district court. All decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or its hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after receipt of the notice of decision to the court in the county in which the land is located. So
In the past, we have not had the county board take it to the court, but we've had people who have been unhappy with the final decision of Board of Adjustment, take the Board of Adjustment to court.
And variances in your time or whatever they've never come to the board ahead of the adjustment mechanism.
We don't have any power to make those decisions.
No, but we could make a recommendation.
We could, although, and I would need to go back and read 394.27, but I am sure that part of the reason that state statute reads this way is to give separation for those special cases between the county board and an independent board that is making that decision that we do not have power over other than to appoint. Our power on the Board of Adjustment is who we appoint, and that's why those appointments are important.
Yeah, and that was gonna be my next question is there definition as far as board terms? I know there is, but is it basically life? We're kind of like a Supreme Court? Oh, no, that's right. They do limit, but then they can renew.
But only,
and then you can actually, maybe for lack of a better word, kick somebody out of the Board of Adjustment if they don't show up to meetings for a certain amount of time. But how we have a Board of Adjustment and Planning Commission is like, you basically don't have the people
There's
that
no
want
term
to,
limits.
yeah, you don't have the people that want to serve on a Board of Adjustment, so basically we'll just have them do, yeah.
So if we wanted to have more turnover there, could we put in term limits?
we had term
We do
limits
have
and
term
then they
limits,
got
yeah.
modified
Yep.
because we were having a hard time naming people.
Is there a requirement as far as the quality of people?
Your judgment
You know,
from your district.
I don't, what I'm going back to is like the HRC where you have, 2 commissioners from 3 counties and you have an accountant and probably a medical person. But Board of Adjustment is not like that.
No, and quite frankly, I mean, we've been working on the planning commission for years down one person because we can't find somebody from the city of Waseca that's willing to serve because they're making decisions about property. And like, how helpful would it be to have a realtor on there? no realtor's gonna touch that, because they bring their expertise, but they're also in a position where they're making decisions that somebody might not like, that they want as a customer later. And we have not had a member from the city of Waseca on the planning commission for 6, 7 years,
I think it's been since I've been there.
a long time.
That one guy retired, or he was going down south of the
Tuttle. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was serving when
But
I
how
was
many
serving.
have been asked? I don't know if Blair or any of us have asked anybody.
Well, we're each obligated to ask someone from our district.
I know it's been talked about randomly, but I don't know if it's ever, I don't recall him ever saying he was turned down.
So I did go to 394, the 27th creation of the board of adjustments. Says that no elected officer of the county or any employee of the board of commissioners shall serve as a member of the board of adjustments. And that one member of such board of adjustment shall also be a member of the planning commission as appointed by this provision. So we don't have to have a county board person or an employee of the county board person on the board of adjustments. So that's not like how the statute talks about creating the board of adjustments. We can have a minimum, I think a minimum of 3 and then a maximum of 5, I think, in there.
Out of the board.
So we do have requirements as to who can be on the board of adjustments. And
So you have to have at least 3. Yeah, I don't know, maybe that's a conversation for another day as far as what
for,
is being recorded, right?
so I know cities, how the board of adjustments is organized in the municipality or cities are a little different from counties. I know that for cities, what the decision of the planning commission and the board of adjustments goes to city council for approval. But it's different from how a county operates because we have 2 different enabling legislature in state statutes to county zoning and then city zoning. And we've talked about having one board for planning commission and board of adjustments in the past. And then our land use attorney said no based on the creation of board of adjustments in state statutes. So we talked about merging the 2, and then he just said it wasn't a good idea based on the state statutes. So it was, how do you have a board that part of their decision goes to the county board and the county board of commissioners and part of the decision when it's just one board. So it's, we talked about that in the past, but our land use attorney said no to that part of it.
I did. Just to add a caveat or another thing to think about, the representative on our, that is the liaison between the planning commission and the board of adjustment for the last 20 years has been a person from Iosco Township. Because that was the role I served when I was on the planning commission for 16 years. And when I became a commissioner, I appointed Stephanie Raymelt, and she was willing to do both. And, that's part of that conundrum too, is who is it and are they willing to do, quite frankly, that's why the board of adjustment and the planning commission meet on the same night. Because I said, I'll do both, but I'm not gonna run in here 2 nights. You guys stick it on the same night so I can get it all wiped out. We have set those things up for the convenience of our residents and then looked for somebody that's willing. And just like with elected officials, we're all seeing how complicated this is. How long does somebody have to serve on the planning commission or the board of adjustment before they have a basic understanding of the ordinances and kind of how it works? That's one of the reasons why term limits went away, because we went, just when somebody gets to know something,
Then they're done.
yeah, but we do appoint And I don't know if we are doing that process as rigorously or as thoughtfully as we need to, because quite frankly, I think every 2 years we need to like reappoint 2 years. We should be taking that process a little more seriously, because then if we don't think somebody is engaged or doing their work, we should appoint somebody else and let them lapse. We don't have to just put them back on just to be nice.
Attendance is really good for that, isn't it?
Well, as they were saying, the board does review that appointment list every year.
Every year, beginning of the year.
Yeah, our first meeting of every year. Review those.
It's hard to not appoint a constituent.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't say, no, we don't want you on there anymore. Why, you know? or-
Bob Vogelstein's gonna die on that board.
But so,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not because of the per diem, because of the mileage reimbursement. Gotta love them, but
they get their groceries here the same night. so-
absolutely.
So,
Anything else on that?
No.
All right.
the next part of it is an extra criteria for after the fact variances. After the fact is if somebody needed to get a variance and then, or did something and then they need to get variances after the fact. So we would typically have 6 extra criteria when we are going through like an after the fact variances. Basically talking about if the person acted in good faith and if the benefit to the county appear to outweigh the detriment to the applicant. So just like an extra criteria to check off when we are doing after the fact variances. I believe that should be, and then the other part of it is like the appeal process for decision by the zoning administrator. If we make a decision and you don't like it, we appeal them for adjustments to determine if the decision was made accurately or not. We've done, since 2017, I think we've only done one appeal of the zoning administrator decision. I think it was a Donahue one. And we had them, our land use attorney weigh in on that, and then we had a board of adjustment go through. But when we are doing the appeal process, we have to make sure that we have like really detailed minutes to go with it, and then we have to send the applicants like detailed findings or facts as to why the appeal was denied or why it was granted. So we've only done one appeal since 2017, since I've been here, and we relied solely on our land use attorney on that situation. The next part of it talks about special events. We need special events permit for if you're having a gathering that's going to be 1,000 people or more. And special events can go to the county board for approval. And it talks about having an application in, but we don't have an application. Basically, we'll get an email from the applicant. That was it again.
Yeah.
So we come to the county board for special events permit. When you're having a gathering, let's say 1,000 people or more, typically because we may need extra law enforcement on site, and then we want to make sure that they're not, the event is going as we want it to go. So that's why.
Before you keep going on, I forgot I had a question back here. Do we have a definition for official control? We refer to that back here.
In the criteria,
Yeah, or just within our UDC. I can't remember where I saw it, but I saw it a few different times.
it'll be in the criteria if it complies with the visual controls in the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
So we don't have a definition in our EDC on visual controls, but visual controls would be our zoning ordinance and then our land use plan, because like our zoning ordinance is the implementation tool for our comprehensive plan. So that's like visual controls developed and guiding our land use decisions and applications.
So that would be defined on a case-by-case basis.
But it's typically also
Criteria.
our ordinance guided development in the county.
So it's, I mean, you're interpreting as a more catch-all term than the entire UBC documentation process essentially. Gotcha.
That's kind of like it. And
Any special event questions?
I haven't done one before, so I don't know how the process is, but I haven't really tested.
You never had to do a special permit for a JRR?
So you never applied for one.
Just did with you.
All the, it was less than 1,000.
I know there was some that were fairly big and were questionable. They had a deputy. Well, at 1,000 people, right? Or when is the tipping point in needing a deputy? 1,000. Yeah, and that's also a tipping point for needing special permit. I think she requested maybe the deputy off. I don't know if it was, he had people out there, but I think she requested, she maybe requested.
Which is fairly proactive.
Yeah. Church events can get very wild.
Oh, my word, yes. For sure.
So this says 250 for special event, not applied in a regular established parking place of worship, stadium, athletic field, arena, park, coliseum, or certain permanent established place of assembly for special events which does not exceed more than 250 people. Or the maximum seating capacity.
And then I know that when we do CUPs for agritourism, we have a condition in there that talks about if they will need a special event and then the events for 1,000 or more.
So that would supersede that there.
Because that's kind of like a condition for your conditional use permit. So you would have to abide by all the conditions that would be recommended to put on that.
And it wouldn't have been a permanent place of worship at that point.
Right.
Yes. So,
It's more of a special event
yeah.
place for
Yeah.
events.
Well, and, okay, I'm just following the natural course here. Assemblage of 1,000 or more people, which is expected to continue for 8 or more consecutive hours. So, I mean, we're talking music festival or something like that here. We're not talking about a graduation party. We're not even talking about the pizza farm having some big vendor fair out there, because they're not gonna get 1,000 people all at one time. And does that, I don't know, maybe making it harder than it needs to be, but, I mean, they might get 1,000 people throughout the day, but they're not gonna get 1,000 people at one time. They don't even have a parking for it.
So I know that the conversation I've had with people would be that if you know, you may never know, unless they do like a registration or like they get something in for you to know that there are more people coming in. And I'm always like, if you know you're gonna hit that 1,000 or more, then it'll be best if you just get a special event planning just in case. But it's better to have it and not use it and not have that on the So
What's
that's
the
why.
fee?
I think we can have a fee, but I haven't done one, so I haven't
It's
really
just-
tested
It
that.
says in here that it's set by the county board.
I don't think I've seen a special event and fee. Maybe
It's
there's
more of a notification than
maybe there's
Check,
I haven't
but I
ever
don't
used it.
have it stuck in my head if there's one on there.
Okay, so the biggest things are traffic, enough bathrooms, the sanitary staff, if they're serving food. If they're having a special event, our public health should be involved in that, if they're serving any kind of food or drink. It's gonna be our people parking on the road. Would this apply to a super big auction?
It does not down here that any other local board, or different county health ordinances or state department of health requirements or applications have to be accompanied with this.
I don't believe we have a fee for that.
Just trying to limit something on it. Anything else? Special events? So, 3.
We're half done.
Still feeling good? Saturday?
Maybe this will go, I don't know.
And I'm very much on this.
General provisions, 4.
Okay.
So with 4, I see a lot of duplication, especially with 4.01C, with section 3.02. When we talked about when we require zoning permit and when we require notice to proceed, this language, most of the language in there is kind of like what we talked about in section 3.02. So I don't know if it would be best if we can like have like a yellow section here that compares to section 3.02. I did point those ones out. But the first one here talks about when you require zoning permit. So if you're making any change in use, if you're doing a new construction, altering or moving or replacing a structure, you need a permit for a sign. You need a permit for shoreline or alterations unless it's exempted in section 6.22. And then permits shall only be approved by them if they comply with this ordinance where applicable. And then it talks about alterations to wetland areas that require review from the Soil and Water Conservation District. I don't know if you want us to add the Land and Water Resource Department in here too, since wetland is like a unified effort between WC and Land and Water Resources.
Chris Howard brought up a question. If, example, if there was something, in the country was going up a hog barn or something, where they would, there's a requirement for so many, the public health, a commissioner, if you were getting a permit or a site visit.
Site.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
That land and water would be added, or would land and water replace or be added to, or soil and water and or land and water resources be at the site visit.
For feedlots.
Yeah, for the
Or
site
feedlots.
team, he's wondering if
Yes.
somebody from your department should be added to that site team. Or replace soil and water, was his question.
Yeah.
So, and that is section 6.05, I think. So, aside the setback requirements in our feedlot ordinance, I'm not really concerned with everything that's in there for the requirements for the feedlot site inspection team. I know that we have requirements as to who can be on that site inspection team and what they can do and what they cannot do. But I don't really have a lot of knowledge in that part of the code, because I typically don't do.
But that's something we can change when we, or look at when we get to 6.
So I did tell Brian about that, I informed him that it's something we can talk about, so when I get a date for that, he'll be the best person to talk to. And I believe he has, he's going to and has some additions or revisions or modifications to that section. So he'll be the best person to kind of talk to about creation and having to add more stuff in there. Like I said, aside 100 feet or 1,000 feet requirement and setback requirements in the feedlot ordinance, I really don't have a acknowledging that.
I just thought I'd bring it up now for
So,
And now that you said that, I remember him mentioning that to me also.
we would know what works now, what doesn't work, and what we should change in. That probably been to only one, I think, when I was having to learn and I was there. So this is it. The next part of it is the part where I feel like it's replicated from our 6.02 standards, where it talks about you have to adhere to state regulations, you already have that. And no permission issued where proposed setback does not comply with future construction plans as approved by the county board and the county highway department. It's already in section 3.02A2, so I believe we should just have like one sentence in there that refers up to that part of it, so that we don't have to have like half a page that's kind of talking about the same thing that it's already in section 3.02 in Article 3. It's the same regulation, the same language.
Questions? Comments?
Love it.
Okay. I'm sorry, I was spacing out.
It's like, so this
So
part-
you're saying, you're thinking that we don't need all this language?
because it's already in section 3.02, it's the same thing in there.
So we're just
Yeah,
saying,
that's
just
it.
simplify it with one statement on it, saying refer back to
Yes.
3.02.
Mm-hmm. That way we don't have to have like half a page that we already talked about in a different section. It's just making the use a little bit.
And she said this is all copy and paste from these sections in 3.02.
In there. And the part about manufactured home parks and recreational camping area, we had a section in Article 6 about that. And public health has their own requirements, and then we basically have our UDC ordinance also, but it will be something that I will have to kind of look into when we get there also, but it talks about complying with state regulation 13183, and the state board of health. So it's just like goes planning and zoning and public health with regards to manufacturing of parks and recreational.
And at our last CHB meeting, Community Health Board meeting, we got a document on a policy document that we laid over for a November meeting that we're supposed to review, and it's our policy booklet on that enforcement exactly. And we absolutely have a gap in understanding by most of our residents that they don't understand that that they think planning and zoning stands apart from public health. They don't understand the overlap, that it's not just doing this part, it's the other part too that you have to make, that you have to do both of those. And we're responsible for this part. And the state of Minnesota tells us we have to do that other part. And we've run into that numerous times, particularly around small recreational campgrounds. And most recently with the Winter Brothers. Yeah. Do you just want to charge them more money?
The third part of it talks about general regulations for structures, and then the first one is a number of principal structures carried out in a parcel. So yeah, every parcel is entitled to one principal structure, unless it's like industrial or commercial use. I think I forgot to put a note in there, but all of our adjoining counties have that regulation in there that talks about a parcel is entitled to one principal structure, typically because if it's like a residential use, we typically would have one principal structure and accessory structures, unless you have an accessory dwelling, which is like secondary dwelling. But that will probably come down the line, but the reason for having that accessory dwelling unit is for medical attention or medical care. but we haven't really been using it for that purpose, but that's what it's supposed to be used for. And then we talk about human habitational structures where you cannot use a garage or tents for dwelling units because it's public health wise, it's not what we should be doing in there. And then there's a section on accessory structures. You can have multiple accessory structures in your parcel provided they're able to be set up. So we don't limit the number of accessory structures you can have in your parcel, but we limit the number of principal structures you can have in your parcel. And then it's broken down into attached and detached accessory structures. So attached structures are like made structurally sound as part of the principal structure. Detached is a separate accessory structure that's different from or built at least 5 feet. In our code it says 5 feet from the principal structure, I think. And I believe state building code says 6 feet. So I don't know if we should be changing that 5 feet to 6 feet. It should be. And 2A1, it's just about where the note is. Setback from principal structure, detached accessory structure shall be located at least 5 feet. But then the state minimum is 6 feet, so maybe this is kind of like where we should change it to 6.
I would think so, right? I would. You also split up the word anytime there, so it's correct. Thanks. That won't bother me.
And then there's a section in our detached accessory structure that talks about accessory structure shall only be erected in the rear yard, except that detached garages may be allowed in the front yard, provided the detached garage maintains a front yard and side yard on the side yard setbacks of the principal structure. So basically saying that you cannot have your accessory structure in the front yard, it has to be on the side of the yard.
So that's how many I lost where you are.
That would be
Number
number 2.
Oh,
Yeah, there.
okay, thank you.
I struggled with this last night. I know that we probably have talked about it before, construction purposes about accessory structures not being allowed in the front yard, it has to be on the regular side yard. And I just struggled with this last night when I was kind of going through, I'm like, why do we have that? I went through the state statute, couldn't find anything in there. This morning when I was driving here, the only logical reason that came in my head is we have the same setback requirements for principal structures for accessory structures. So like, for example, in the X zone, your principal structure has to be 75 feet from the road right away or from the property line. And then it's the same requirement for accessory structures. The accessory structure has to be 75 feet from the road right away. The difference between how the setback measurement is for accessory structures and principal dwellings is the side and rear yard. So for your house, it has to be 40 feet from the side or rear yard, but for your accessory structure, it has to be 20 feet in the end zone. So I don't know if that was the reason why we have that in there, and the fact that the main for residential structures, for example, the main highlights for the main use of your parcel is for residential use. So you wouldn't want your accessory structure to be the first thing you need before you get into the principal structure. So I thinking that's kind of like why we have it in there, because I typically don't know, I don't know why we have that, but I struggled with it yesterday, I'm like, why do we have that in there? But
There are, yeah, okay, like I'm thinking of my cousin had a house up in New Prague, one of them, like the Kelkeys on 8, several houses developed there. On 8 going out to the lake, just when you turn off 13, there's about 6 houses in a row. And their house was where you go like this to the house, but then there was a garage set off to the side before you get to the house. So would that not be allowed in our code,
So this says that,
even
shall
if
be,
it's beyond all the setbacks?
so this says that it has to be in the rear or side yard. But we have the same front yard measurement for accessory structures and then for principal structures. But we haven't been applying this how it's supposed to be applied in situations where the house is more than 75 feet from the road right away. So in such a situation, it can still accommodate the accessory structure in the front yard.
They can't.
I think so, because then we have the same requirement, it has to be minimum 75 feet from the road right away, and the house is like 100 or 120 feet from the road right away, so they are still meeting that setback. The only requirement is, it doesn't have to be in the front yard, so we haven't been looking at this, it's just something that we recently realized that it has to be like that. But I can think of a number of permits that we've done where there's accessory structures in the front yard. The only time that we don't allow accessory structures to be in the front yard is if it's like an accessory dwelling unit. That's when it has to be on the side of the yard because it's like a secondary dwelling for medical attention. That's the only time we don't allow that, but if they are meeting setbacks 75 feet from the road right away at minimum, then we would allow that in there. So I don't know if the word there should be shall, maybe it can be may, because they have to meet setbacks. If it's 75 feet from the road right away or from the property line, then we would allow that.
So that would be for a new structure. New structure.
So if somebody has a house, wants like a shed on there, if they're meeting the 75 feet from the road right away, we would allow that. We haven't been, I actually didn't know about this requirement until I chanced upon it a couple months ago.
So I think the question becomes, do we, because where this is gonna apply is out on sites that are set far back from the road.
Yes.
That's the only place this is gonna apply. Do we feel that it's important that the primary dwelling structure be closest to the road? Now, some old farm sites and stuff, obviously they are non-conforming to this because they got, the house got built how long ago?
Well, they built the barn first so they could have some income to build the house.
So
Yeah.
I just think of three
with that,
north of Janesville,
Mhm.
where they put the house back, and now there's a shed and a second shed in front of the yard.
Yeah,
I guess it depends on what you wanna look at.
well, and what happened there was they came in for conditional use permit for the shed first, and they were having a business out there, a house moving business, and then they went, oh, we're not gonna move houses anymore, let's put a house out here.
so with that comment that Commissioner Ozzy mentioned, if you go further down, we have timing of construction where it says that you cannot have your accessory structure before your principal structure. So then again, if somebody wants to build a shed on there before their house, in this regulation here, talking about timing of construction, you cannot do that. But what we've typically done is we allow you to have your accessory structure before your principal structure, provided there's no covenant on that portion that says that you cannot do that. But then we revert back to the setbacks. So it means that your accessory structure has to meet the principal building setbacks for when they're doing that. That's when we actually have an exception. But from this code, it says that you have to have your house or your shed or your garage, basically. But we permitted structures, parcels that have just a shed on there, but then we use a principal, we see that shed as a principal structure and not an accessory structure. So they have to meet the setback requirements for principal structures because it's the first structure that's going in. So that's like the downside of what we've been doing.
So can we clarify that? Because obviously, it's not that unusual for somebody to build a shed first. I see it over in Blue Earth County on Highway 60, there's a couple places there where they built a shed. Maybe a house will go there eventually, but do we want to keep people from building a shed as a primary structure? Or do we want to make that hard?
But that says residential district.
Yes, so then in our X zone, we have some, think it's called cumulative zoning, that's not like what we have where like add on. So in the A zone, we typically would allow residential uses and agricultural uses, and then as we progress, some of the uses will apply, like what we would allow in the limited residential will be a little different from what we would allow in the M district. So aside limited residential, that's strictly limited residential, we allow residential uses in the A zone as well. Because it's like accumulated, like more like accumulated zoning as opposed to like a restricted zoning saying that A zone should only be for ag purposes. So it's kind of like the nuance in that. But I find that in some subdivisions, I think in Gooseland, they have a restricted covenant that says that you cannot have your shed before your house. That's how the subdivision was done. So we would, and they have like restriction on even the color of the dwelling and how it should look like and everything. So in such a situation, if somebody comes in and wants to build a shed, they're like, no, you can't do that because of that restriction in that subdivision. But aside that, if somebody wants to build a shed before their house and there's no restriction or restricted covenant on that, we would allow that. But we would see that shed as a principal structure and not an accessory structure, so it will meet the principal structure requirements. So it would, at that point, be the principal structure, and then when the house comes in, the house would be the principal structure at that point in time. The only thing is setbacks.
And now people are building houses too.
We see the shelves as the principal structure.
Mhm.
Not an accessory structure. So,
But you consider that the primary structure?
yes.
So are you recommending, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're thinking of taking F out of there?
No, I think I mentioned that because Commissioner Crosby mentioned that some people build barns for their house. So that's kind of like why I mentioned what we would do, that we would see the barn at the time as a principal structure for that person until the house comes in, because it's typically going in the egg zone and it's allowed. So the only difference is we would apply the principal structure setbacks to that barn as opposed to seeing the barn as an accessory structure at that time, based on the kind of construction.
Want to quit?
So I'm not recommending any changes, I just said I'll mention it. And the other part of it talks about accessory dwelling units. So the state has a regulation on, I think it was called the burning pots, or I think it has like a different thing, but I didn't put that. But Blue County has theirs as the elder care or dependent care units. But how the state regulation is, it's not like a temporary structure, it's not like a permanent dwelling for health care benefits, but our accessory dwelling units actually provides more than what the state temporary family health care dwelling provides. I think with this one, the maximum, it has to be temporary in nature where it doesn't have to be on a permanent foundation. And then there's a limit to the size, which is like really smaller than what our accessory dwelling units should be. In that, I think it has to be no more than 300 per square feet. So the whole thing has to be no more than 300. And it has to be primarily a single offsite, and then it has to kind of like different from where you're going to install it. So more like prefab structures.
And we didn't go with this language specifically because Granny Pods was a brand kind of thing. And this went into state statute shortly before we were redoing our code with this, have your parents come stay in your backyard or your mom or something, And this language is meant much more for urban areas where you got a little backyard and, mom's not doing well in her house, let's put her in this little granny pod in the backyard and we'll take care of her. Most people that live out in the country have room for way more than 300 square feet for grandma if she wants to come and stay close by. And that's why we didn't go with this language, because we really thought, A, we're not gonna make people buy a granny pod if they wanna take care of mom, and B, we wanna give some flexibility so that they can do what they want. But obviously, we kept it at 800 square feet, because we said, well, you can't build a whole nother house back there for grandma. The idea that this is temporary and that you're accommodating caregiving for elderly folks or people with disabilities.
And with the state regulation, it was more temporary and it was more like extra administrative expense, or like having, you basically would have to record an agreement that says that you have to buy the card on it, and it has to be removed when you know that the person no longer needs the care for it. So it's like extra enforcement on the part of the county. So we decided not to go with that, and I think they had the last language in there that the counties could opt out of it, so we decided not to do it. And we have this. So this is more like a more permanent, people see that as secondary dwelling because we don't allow two dwellings on their parcel. But the reasoning for having this accessory dwelling unit is for healthcare and not for if you need a secondary dwelling on your parcel. So we do have a limit to what the size of an accessory dwelling unit. I think the minimum has to be 300 square feet and then the maximum has to be 800 square feet. We've had conversations in the past where people wanted to go 1,000 or 1,200 square feet. So I did look at what other counties have, and it's basically the same for adjoining counties in there. And what we require in here, we require 2 bathrooms, 1 kitchen, 1 utility room, 1 large room, 1 living room, or a combination of living and dining room. And I think Will County and Westwell County require just 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom actually. So we actually require people to have a maximum of 2 bathrooms in there, but some other counties require them to have less than that bathroom requirements.
No, that says shall not contain more than 2 bathrooms.
Yep, so Will County says no more than 1. So
You can't have more than 1, or you have to have at least 1.
it just says no more than 1 in there, so it requires 1 bathroom, so you can't have more than 1 bathroom for Will County. And then Westwell County allows 1 temporary dwelling per lot, and then that will be occupied for 1 year or less. So they have more like a temporary dwelling, kind of, and ours is more permanency, as opposed to what other counties would require.
So that requires a different septic system.
So usually they would upgrade their septic system.
Upgrade the
Mean
septic
that
system.
they-
So
So depending on what.
ADUs go on a flat, on a floating slab. So you can have, if I'm here with my mother and my mother-in-law, I can move one of them, build this pod, and put one of them over here on this floating ADU, correct? And then change my septic system.
The requirement you have is the owner of the parcel has to live either in the principal structure or the ADU. And the ADUs always go with the principal structure. So you can have an ADU on a separate parcel. It always has to go with the principal structure. So it's more like a secondary dwelling, but you have to, the person that owns the parcel has to either live in one of them, either the ADU or the main house.
So there is a few of them in Wasatch County.
This year we've done, I think this is a year that we've done more ADUs, actually, as opposed to ADUs. And our other requirement is you can rent out an ADU in our WC. So it's because of the permanent nature of how our ADU standard is, you could actually rent it out if it's in Africa, you can actually rent it. So that's kind of like why I feel people see that as a second dwelling on their parcel as opposed to it being there for medical attention. Because we have it in there as you could rent it out.
And that's one of the reasons why it's only 800 square feet,
To
because obviously you don't want to have somebody build an accessory structure. Oh, you can rent it out to a family of 5 and make $2,000 a month. I think, and I'm just gonna throw this out there too, because as I was thinking through this, if you can rent it out, what about, I know we don't have anything in our public health, and I don't know that we have, and I'm really pretty confident we don't have anything in our code about the RBOs.
You know,
And I know LeSueur County is just tackling that in their county, and we need to put that on our list of, we gotta figure that out. That's gotta be somewhere in here before we finish. And it may apply to this, particularly you build an accessory structure, you put it on your lake lot, mom dies, and now, oh, you rent it out every weekend. Okay, are we okay with that? We gotta decide.
What is childbearing age? It seems very ambiguous to me.
Before menopause.
Childbearing age. So we really intend that to just be a case by case basis based on that.
So I think the Census Bureau has a definition, I think, or something. Let's see. No, I think I lost it. But then if you go to Census Bureau's information, they do have information about statistics on people with childbearing age, and they do have a definition, but I think I've seen it before during grad school. But the definition that's coming off of Google will be an age when women are not able to give birth to children. But I know that Census Bureau would have a definition. I think I've seen it before. So I might have to.
I guess I see it being more convoluted at the beginning of that age range. Any exception. See. Within that criteria, you have a 12-year-old disabled child and qualify for that. And you,
That extra 200 square feet.
With parents, you mean, or, I mean, you'd have to be of legal age.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. You know, you wouldn't build a
well,
structure.
that's what I'm asking, because it doesn't say you have to be of legal age, it says you have to be childbearing. And the whole be 10, 11, 12 years old, so.
I know.
Depends whether you're a girl or a boy.
We're not doing that.
Sorry, I taught health ed for way too many years. We can go down that rabbit hole. Let's not.
I will clarify that. I think I've seen it before during grad school. Some population.
Oh, here we go. 13 to 50.
It's childbearing age.
Well, strangely enough, I'm pulling this out of the water quality criteria. It has to do with fish consumption, the recommendation for fish consumption. And according to that, in the state of Minnesota, childbearing is considered 13 to 50 for women. I would assume that and that might be a big assumption, that same definition would hold across the state statute.
So is it better defined as a vulnerable adult rather than a disabled person or child?
That is a legal definition that someone might have to go through. Well, and why wouldn't they want to go through to have their disabled family member declared a vulnerable adult so that they could take advantage of the programs associated with that.
Just need to put whatever number. Personally not comfortable with making a disabled person. We can make it, an exception maybe made for vulnerable adults instead.
Well, I'm just throwing it out there as an option. It's kind of a, I hesitate to use the word loophole, but somewhat of a loophole. By the state definition, I think they 13 ago, the understory should be to construct an ADU, 3-bedroom ADU up to 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, why would it be, that's limiting it to females then,
Not necessarily.
vulnerable adult. Yeah, but men's child bearing age goes much later than a woman.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so guys can just live there forever.
I would just change it to vulnerable adult.
I think so. Well, I mean, that would be my,
Unless there's some reason it was stated this way from the state statute.
Well, and that's why I ask about the earlier time frame. Is that relevant, or in my mind, that wasn't the intent, because the child, you know, a pre-legal age individual, pre-adult individual is going to be living with the parents in the home. And then at that vulnerable adult designation, whether that determination is made.
And if it was built to this, and that time elapses, and that person moves on or moves out, then how do you rent this to someone that's not in that condition, if you will, and it's greater than 800?
then it's just gotta be accepted as grandfather.
I can't say. Not going down that road again.
But yeah, you can't make them tear it down, because there's no longer that vulnerable adult.
It's not a slab. So vulnerable adults is generally accepted unless we come up with something else.
So in the state statute, it talks about mentally or physically impaired person. That's how they put it.
Sure, would be vulnerable.
I would be comfortable with vulnerable persons as opposed to disabled persons.
Vulnerable leaves it wide open, doesn't it?
This is vulnerable also, taking effect physical disability.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's just an abstract.
Or I can just look into it some more.
You can mark it and keep going.
And then we have that requirement about ADUs being in the side area, and then it has to be separated at least 20 feet, and no more than 150 feet from the principal structure. So we require at least 20 feet, and then I think we're only requires 10 feet. So that was a difference I was trying. In there, but it doesn't have to be in the front yard. I think it basically reverting back to accessory structures. And how the location of accessory detached accessory structures not also on enforcement in the county. But in I think in St. Paul and Minneapolis, they have like a different regulation for ADUs. You can basically have an ADU in your principal structure. Like they have like a whole separate ordinance altogether for location of an ADU. It can be in your house, it can be in a detached structure, it can be an attached structure. So this is a little different. And I know that I recently got an email from the American Planning Association on ADUs, but I haven't really had the time to kind of go through that requirement. So maybe if I need something to it, I can kind of look at it and see what they want to recommend in, or how ADUs should be handled in counties or cities. But
What is the setback for like a detached garage from a dwelling? Is it greater than 10 feet? Is it 20 feet? I mean, I would think that fire hazard alone would be something that should be looked at.
it's just 6 feet. It is 6 feet.
6 feet. But there's no one living in the garage.
Yeah.
I would not want it less than 20 feet. You know, what did you say, Blue Earth was 10 feet away?
Yes.
I mean, you know, that's, yeah.
I'm just gonna remind you that as soon as every foot you push that out on small rural property, if you've got a half an acre or an acre, even if it's surveyed, by the time you do septic, if you have any other accessory dwellings and all of that, there's some of those small rural properties, you're gonna say, well, you just don't have room. And I'm okay with that, but I just want you to think that through.
This could be subject to variance if we encounter
It could be, absolutely. I don't disagree with your safety thoughts, but if there isn't, if there isn't a public health issue there, because they're gonna have to plumb that thing into their septic, and so all of that, all of those details about where things are there too are gonna play into whether it fits. A few feet will make a big difference on whether you can make that work or not.
The last one I seen was the septic was right in between,
Both of them.
right?
And I'm gonna walk back my childbearing age definition, because as I looked through that study, they had a bunch of different studies, and each one had a different definition of childbearing age.
So if you no longer want to have an ADU on your parcel, so we do have something called like a deed restriction. It's like a document that says that the person has an ADU on their parcel, but if you no longer want to have it, you have to record a document that eliminates or expires that ADU. But then if you've already built that ADU, you no longer have it, but it's still like a secondary dwelling. So I'm thinking that we can have an extra requirement in here that you have to like not make it a toilet anymore, where you can just take some of the plumbing out or something to make it look like a shed. If the person doesn't want to have an ADU anymore, but we haven't had any situations where all of the ADUs just coming in have been converted back to not being an accessory dwelling. But maybe something we should add in there, because we have that requirement for every ADU parcel. So do we add that in there as an extra one or not?
Added what again?
So if you no longer want to have an ADU on your parcel,
Yeah.
we basically would record a document that says that this parcel no longer has an ADU. But the structure is still existing, so how do you make that one bedroom apartment basically not a one bedroom apartment?
Right.
Do you require them to take out some of the utilities or facilities in there?
Do you make them take out the septic then?
The subject or not hook it up to the septic anymore or something, so maybe it will be an extra step.
What would be the advantage to the homeowner to eliminate that ADU? Would it be a property tax thing or
Maybe,
property value?
I would think if it wasn't a permanent structure anyway, it's gonna be worth more money disabling some physical piece of it. So it's uninhabitable than it would be to sell it and move it off the site.
But it does add, to have an ADU does add property value.
But if, right there, plumbing and other utilities must be removed to make it inhabitable if it's eliminated or it expires. Well, you're not gonna take out the, I mean, what are you gonna unplug it because it's a camper, or you know what I'm saying, or you're gonna shut the water off going to it? I mean, you're not gonna, It just depends on how deep you get into this.
Yeah, but hang on, back up, because we don't have, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have in our accessory dwelling unit an expiration. Granny pods had an expiration, you got a year and then you had to move it out. We don't have that. Once it's built, it can stay there forever. Our question becomes, what is its use after Granny is not there anymore?
But you can rent it out, so people would see that as a secondary dwelling as opposed to what we would typically would want somebody to use an ADU for. I haven't seen anyone not wanting to have an ADU on their parcel before. It's just something that, more like having a secondary dwelling on your parcel and have it where their kids can move in. So we haven't really been using this ADU requirement like we should be using it for healthcare purposes. We just basically use it because somebody wants to move back home on that, and like the maximum you can do is 800 square feet, so you should be good to go. That's how we've been doing it in the past. So from my personal standpoint, this is one part of it that I don't feel comfortable having to break that status quo with, because like we've allowed people to basically have 800 square feet on their parcel and not use that medical care as a reason. But we now tell people that this is what we should be using it for, but we haven't been using it for that purpose. So having to not follow that status quo is kind of something that I find difficult with.
So would we be better off to just eliminate this and make people go through getting a TDR, and you want to put up an accessory dwelling unit for grandma? You just get a TDR and put up whatever you want, as long as it can meet the space requirements of the site.
So if you're doing, so then if you have to have somebody do a TDR for that, so we earlier talked about every parcel is entitled to one principal structure. So if you have to go through that TDR process, you have to go through the process of splitting up that parcel in the first place and then doing a transfer of development. So that's like an extra limitation to this requirement. So it's more like creating an extra hardship for people. The ones that we've done recently, basically, we've talked to people about it has to be for medical attention, but we've had situations where the person just wants to move back home with mom and dad and don't want to live in the same dwelling as their parents, so they want like a secondary dwelling. That's kind of like what we've done too for some other people, but we now tell them that this is what we should be using that ADU for and not for secondary dwellings. But we would have that situation where the person just basically wants to have a secondary dwelling and have their kids move in.
So virtually the only thing that a person would gain if there was an elimination or an expiration is the fact that the property taxes value could go down a little bit because it's not an accessory dwelling at that point in time. That would be the only thing that would drive this.
Why you want to eliminate it. And we could just well stretch that expiration off of there. We don't have an expiration.
Unless they
It's
want
just
to.
elimination.
The only time we do that expiration elimination is if they want to do it. So because we record that deed restriction that says that you have an ADU on your parcel, but if they no longer want to have it and want to like convert it back to a shed or move it somewhere else, then we have to more like record another document that cancels that deed restriction. So that's not like what this elimination or expiration talks about, that if you want to take off that ADU from your parcel, then you have to record a document that says that you no longer have to have it anymore.
Right, but it's an elimination, is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because we don't, like the granny pods, you were saying have an expiration, what we don't.
So we only would do this if the owner doesn't want to have it anymore, but I haven't seen anyone come back and say that I don't want to have an ADU on my parcel anymore.
Right.
It's just permanent structure on the parcel. And we give them the option to rent it out, so that's like extra income coming to people if they want to rent that ADU out to one of that parcel.
And quite frankly, in high-end homes that are being built in some places, it is, a mother-in-law's suite is very common. Where they, when they build the house, they put on a whole separate area for mom and dad to come and stay.
But even if you were going to, say, eliminate it, that it's not a dwelling, and you were gonna use it for the sewing room, you're still gonna want a restroom in there.
Yeah,
That is not elimination,
that's right.
so.
And you
That-
are paying property taxes to have that extra thing there because you want to be able to go someplace else and not have anybody bug you when you sew or
Right.
woodcraft or
Right.
whatever
So
creative
it's just
thing.
the expiration because it doesn't count, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, just basically leaving it alone, other than.
Other than the expiration, because it's probably not gonna become a factor.
Because we don't have an expiration.
No, but even someone eliminating that ADU at any moment.
Well, I think it comes down to, we're trying to read somebody's mind.
Yeah.
Who knows, some cheapskate says, I don't want to pay the $20 extra a year to
Right.
have that thing. I mean, I know people.
And just make sure whatever language is accepted is one of them. I know even less of what childbearing use is.
We're having birthing center.
Yes.
And we're.
Oh my goodness, let's not even get there.
So we move on.
How we doing? Still going?
All good?
Yeah,
Powering through?
Lunchtime is coming.
Oh, yeah.
I can hold off. You're out of Oreos?
Yes. I brought my snack.
I can go get it.
I can hear the desperation in his voice.
I'll make it.
What do you got in the main push comments on?
And we really don't have anything aside the fact that you need a conditional use permit to have a manufactured home park on the parcel. And you have to comply with these requirements and then the requirements from public health as well. It's basically standard requirements and then requirements for public health. So you do a conditional use permit and then the add-on would be to require and comply with public health requirements for manufactured home parks or recreational camping area.
Questions, manufactured homes? Straightforward.
And then the next one will be temporary structures. So temporary structures are not designed for long-term use, but for short-term. In state statute, it talks about the maximum number of days to have a temporary structure on your parcel should be 180 days. We've had conversations about temporary structures with regards to Zimmer lease and air use and having seen that as temporary as opposed to permanent. But this is kind of like, if it's gonna go beyond 180 days, then it's more like permanent use for that parcel as opposed to it being temporary in nature. But in thinking through this, and in this case, when we did it, we are still doing it because we still don't have the documents signed yet, so it's still work in progress on our table after 2+ years. We could actually see what he's doing as an interim use as opposed to temporary use. Interim use in the sense that it's something like midway between being permanent and being temporary. So that's kind of like what I could come up with when I was thinking through yesterday. And the definition for an interim use in state statute talks about an interim use is a temporary use of a parcel until a particular date, until the appearance of a particular event, or until zoning regulations no longer permitted. So that's not like would give him more than that 180 days. Or if he's talking about it being temporary, he might have more than 180 days. But then with his argument when he came to the county board was more like gonna do like, for lack of a better phrase, shifting cultivation where he's gonna move the structures all year, but he hasn't been doing that, so that's kind of like in my head, more permanent or more in line with interim use as opposed to temporary use for his parcel. Maybe that's not like how we could see that, but we did a code change to allow him to do it, but he still hasn't complied with our requirements for when we changed that.
Are those signatures still from when he said he couldn't because of COVID?
Yeah, the same thing.
When was your last contact with it?
I don't think it, was it this year or?
Yeah, I think it was earlier,
Earlier this year.
a few months ago maybe.
And you need signatures from, it's either a mother or aunt or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, so the parcel, I think, is owned by more than one person,
Okay,
so that other people that have interest in that parcel have to
I
sign
have
up
to
on it.
sign it, so he's got some signatures on it,
Not all of
just
it.
not some big
Permanently temporary structure.
Yes. Correct.
permanently temporary.
Permanently.
It's a permanent temporary.
Okay. I don't see that.
Probably create that.
And then we have a section on temporary storage of equipment, where, that's kind of like, when I was thinking through that, that's kind of like how I got that interim use, that we could have used that for somebody as opposed to the discussion on temporary or permanent structures on there. The only thing that stood out to me was all equipment and temporary buildings shall meet the setbacks of the district. So in as much as it's temporary, you have to still try to meet setbacks. You can't have it all the way to your property line. But we did that code change that allowed somebody to have a structure closer than the required. It was like an agricultural accessory structure, you can have it closer than the required 20 feet. But then if one parcel is sold and then it's no longer being owned by you or your family member, you have to take it down or do a variance to allow it to be on that parcel. That's like the current update we have on the UDC. I don't have anything on lots and yard controls unless you have something for me on that one. And I don't have anything on height regulations as well.
I underlined area regulations and put a star behind it, but I can't figure out why I did that.
It says no lot shall be reduced in size below the minimum required for the proposed use in the zoning districts where the lot is located. So I think it's talking about us having a minimum requirement for the parcel that for you to have a single family dwelling on a parcel, it has to be 1 acre minimum. So it's just basically saying that you cannot dump it down, so that's a 1 acre, but the argument has always been you can almost always apply for a variance from all of the requirements we have in the UDC, but you have to try to make sure that you're proven or making a case for practical difficulty. And then your request has to be reasonable and have to go through all of that requirement or criteria, so you can still be able to do that.
Through a variance.
Yes, through the variance process. But I don't have anything on height regulations. I think it's talking about maximum heights. And in our zoning ordinance, in our zoning district standards, we do have restrictions on the heights, especially in the industrial zoning districts. I think that the maximum is 75 feet. And then for cell towers, you can go beyond that maximum height requirement, but through a conditional use. So your conditional use process would allow you to increase that height requirement in there. And on yard regulations, the first one talks about how we would measure front yard setbacks. The minimum front yard depth as specified in any district shall be measured from the established property line or proposed right of way of the streets on which the large fronts. So if your parcel, we either measure it from the right of way line or from the line, your front yard line, based on how your parcel is configured. So if it includes the road right of way, your setback from the center line of the road might be a little deep into your parcel. And if your parcel starts from the edge of the road right of way, the setback, 75 feet setback line is measured from the edge of the road right of way. So it depends on how your parcel was deeded to you, how your parcel is configured. Then we have a situation where parcels, like corner parcels, have double frontage, where like the north part of it is the road right of way, and then maybe west part of it is road right away. So we would measure the frontier setback from each of that road right aways. But, sometimes if they are not able to meet that requirement, then they have to go through a variance process to kind of like reduce that setback requirement. I think I've done 2 variances. One, I'm gonna do one maybe next month, hopefully. And we did one last year where it was in the limited residential zoning district where they had like a double frontage parcel. And then the setback required them to have 50 feet from the road and away from each of the roads. So if you measure 50 feet from that, they basically did not have buildable space in there. So they had to do a variance to allow them to get closer to the road right away as opposed to meeting the setback requirements.
I'd be interested in looking to see what other entities do on that, because I know in some places, particularly in cities, corner lots, how zoning applies to corner lots, some places, it's like, okay, even though you're a corner lot, this is your frontage, and the other one is considered a side setback.
Okay.
With, just by definition, you pick a frontage, and that's where the frontage applies, and that one, because it's not the frontage, is a side yard setback. And I would be interested in knowing if that's a good idea, a bad idea.
Okay. But we have in here that on double frontage lots, the required frontage shall be measured on both streets. So it's like an evaluation, but I'll definitely will look into what that.
I know we have that now, but I'm not sure I'm not sure that that's not overly restrictive, that we shouldn't just assume. Pick a front yard, whichever your front yard is, that's where the setback applies and the other one doesn't. Although then, well, we gotta think about, is it safe? If there's a road there, what's the setback for the road? That's gonna apply regardless of which front yard you pick.
And then the next one would be, we have an exception in here for measuring the front, for measuring the yard requirements. So if we have parcels that are accessed through like a recorded easement. So with that, if you have a recorded easement to access your parcel, we revert back to that frontier setback to be called to the rear yard setback. So like, if in the zoning district, the rear yard setback says that it has to be 40 feet, that would be your frontier setback because you're accessing the parcel through a recorded easement. So we wouldn't require that 75 feet, but we would dumb down to what the rear yard setback requirement would be if you have like a recorded easement to get onto your parcel. That's like an exception to how we will measure the frontier setback for parcels that are accessed through a recorded easement. Questions? We should do with this one here. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we have like height restrictions for fences in each of the zones, but you will find those in each of the zoning districts.
And, yeah, the only difference there is 8 feet versus 6 feet. In a bound district, you're allowed 8 foot.
Yeah. So in the X zone and the limited residential, within the side of where you have 8 feet in the height, at any point. We have some requirements on retaining walls and what they should be made of. And we probably talked about outdoor storage before, but it basically talks about in any residential district, all materials and equipment shall be stored within the building or fully screened, so as not be visible from adjoining properties except the following. So there's the 5 items you have there can be stored outside of a building. if you're using a usable laundry equipment, like irrigation equipment, construction and landscaping material being used, off-street parking of your passenger vehicle, and then boats and trailer homes can be stored in the rear yard of a parcel but not less than 10 feet from the property line. So those are the things you could store outside that do not have to be fully screened or be in a building. But aside that, all outdoor storage has to be in a building or fully screened from an adjoining property. The other one would be our sign regulation. I know that when we did the UBC, we qualified the UBC in 2018. This is a section where we basically approved on its own. We approved everything else except the sign regulation. That's because regulations on sign and commercial speech and everything else are a little dicey. And I don't think there's been any changes in state statute with regards to this. So I don't think we should be touching it anyway. The only comment is we basically have a section in our UBC about definitions and acronyms. So I would prefer that we move these definitions to section 8.02. We are supposed to have a definition in the middle of the UBC. That's the only comment I have with regards to the sign regulations. But aside that, I don't have any more comments on this.
Comments on
On the sign regulation on
Oh.
section 4.12
4.12, which goes all the way to
to the end.
that,
Oh,
7, wait,
4.027.
where the hell does it start from here? Temporary signs.
Okay.
It says, and I think this is just a grammatical thing, no off-site sign shall be erected or maintained within 500 feet of a church, school, dwelling, historic site, public or restroom. Shouldn't that be public restroom?
It says 7.
7.
No, you're,
So, which one?
I'm on the
there, keep
temporary
going,
side.
see, it says temporary signs, now go to
Okay.
7.
Oh.
Now go down, keep going.
Temporary sign under-
Right there, no off-site sign shall be erected or maintained within 500 feet of a church, school, dwelling, historic site, public or rest area. Isn't it a public rest area?
A public area
Yeah,
or a
or
rest
rest
area.
Oh, public or rest area, also public area or rest area. Okay. I just thought proportion to then public rest area. And then, okay, so you're saying you're good all the way up until what, 4:13?
Yeah, I'll go down the way beyond 13, 4.12.
I don't know why I was gonna read through this. Additional on signs may be allowed a lot. See if that makes sense.
Oh, really?
Additional energy.
Additional on signs.
Never read, go back to
Maybe
the
that
first
on-
step.
Shouldn't that be on-site signs?
Yes.
On-site signs may be allowed. Yes. A lot. Conditional use permit. On,
On and that.
allowed on a lot. The conditional use permit. Just a little bit of grammar.
Isn't on sign, so it's not lighted? Or not? Yeah,
You are not helping
On sign
anybody.
or off sign?
on or off?
So that was the only thing I had.
Right.
But then, do you have anything in 4:13?
No,
So go to 4:13.
okay.
toward the end there. E. Okay,
Wetland creation,
yep. So it says, wetland creation, restoration, and construction shall be exempt if the proposal can satisfy all of the criteria. Then it talks about wetland creation with the NRCS, to wetland creation, restoration, and/or construction shall not be constructed closer than 75 feet to the boundary of any adjacent property or existing road easement. And number 3, an approved land alteration permit shall be obtained from the planning and zoning office prior to any excavation, alteration, or impoundment. To me, so then you go to F, and you go down to number 3, and it's the exact same wording. Conditional use permit, any condition set forth by the board for the conditional use permit and an approved land alteration permit shall be obtained from the planning and zoning office prior to any excavation, alteration, or impoundment.
so,
I don't get it there. To me, 3 shouldn't be up and above.
so it's just like, in thinking through this, it's just like somebody, you have to get a conditional use permit, and then you have to get your land alteration permit as well. So it's just like somebody doing a conditional use permit for conditional use permit, but then they have to do a zoning permit after the conditional use permit is approved. So it's just like, the fact that you get a conditional use permit doesn't mean that you have the appropriate permit to do what you want to do. So you have to get the required permit in after your TUP is approved as well.
Because they're removing materials, the idea is that this is a two-step process. I don't know if that's the right place to put it.
Yep.
But the idea is, it's a two-step process. First, you need to get your conditional use permit, and then you need to get a land alteration permit, because you are removing materials. And the idea is that before you start removing materials, you have thought through the whole process of restoration, and there's a restoration plan in place as part of that,
So then it also would apply to E. Wetland creation, restoration, and/or construction shall be exempt if the proposal can satisfy all the following criteria. And one of the criteria would be an approved land alteration permit shall be obtained. So you're still getting a permit even though you're exempt.
So if you're not meeting all the requirements above, then you need a conditional use permit. It's just like how we would have permitted uses and conditional uses. If your use is permitted, you still need a zoning permit to be able to build. And if you go through a CUP process, you still need a zoning permit to be able to do what you have to do based on the conditional use.
Isn't it
That's kind of like how I'm seeing it.
E is saying you're exempt, F is if you're not exempt. This is what you have to do. F is saying, so E shows you're exempt if you meet these criteria. F says you don't meet those criteria, so this is what you have to do. The callbacks in the subsection right there is the 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, so in either case, whether you're exempt or not exempt, you need to have the land alteration permit obtained by the planning and zoning. Okay.
But we don't do graphic stuff, PNG anymore. It would be Land and Water Resource Management Department.
So that's going to need to be updated.
We can change that to not be PNG.
But you're still, would these still be,
It's the same permit, but it's the same permit, but it wouldn't come
Language
from
for SWC
planning and
as well.
It's the same permit form, but it wouldn't be coming from, I wouldn't be signing up on it. It would be Chris.
That would be Mark, because he's doing our WACA.
Yes.
The ones that-
So is the PCD then?
What?
Is the PCD?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we want to put it in SWCD or do we want to say from the proper office? Because it could change again.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, the designated WAC administrator makes
Yes.
more sense.
Yeah.
Instead of
and
municipal.
Where are you putting that in?
Instead of planning and zoning office.
designated worker department.
Yeah, in both E3, E13 and F3.
Okay.
Not WACA office, WACA administrator. Would be the proper term.
Any other questions on 413? You have more stuff to check.
All right, what's your thoughts? Should we tackle 5 yet?
Yeah, let's go, we can do it.
Get warmed up now.
We got 10 minutes.
So no.
No,
Michael says so.
He's joking.
But I have to let, 5 would not be what I deal with, will be public health, and then Chris and Mark. So those would have to be the ones to kind of go to that. 5.
And then, I don't know, at some point if we need to have land resource also involved in some of this.
Yep, so
For
that'll
5,
be,
we will.
that'll be 5,
5 and
public
6.
health and
Yeah.
environmental.
So we can do 5 in Mommy's absence,
Yeah.
most likely, and then 6 will take January through March.
So your estimated ETA?
Get it up next year.
If everything goes, you're taking 6 weeks or 12 weeks or?
12,
12
but it'll be,
3 months. Okay, so December.
She doesn't do great.
yep, because I'm going to right now.
We'll be back sometime in February.
No, I think it'll be January 2nd. So right
Yeah,
after,
we're in October, early October, September, yeah. 12, October, November, December, yeah, sometime.
Yeah.
That would be a good time to tackle this, because I'm sure I'll have plenty of time then, right? We're always gonna have plenty of time in the winter, and then all of a sudden.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Try to get 5 in sometime in December. Or November.
November, for sure.
so that'll be on Chris and then Sarah. Timeline.
Yeah, we can put that together. It'll be good. Anything else today?
That it?
All right, as far as I'm concerned.
Commissioners, nothing else before the board? We will adjourn at 11:50.